Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the continuation of this Central Committee meeting number 6, as we continue today, Wednesday, October the 16th. And this is the Central Committee handling the draft amended 2024 budget as presented by the government of St. Maarten. The draft budget was presented by the Minister of Finance along with an introduction, after which time members of Parliament were allowed to ask questions. And since then, the ministers have been appearing in Parliament to answer the questions regarding their respective ministries. So as we continue today, we now have with us the Minister of Justice and his support staff, Minister Lewis in this capacity as Minister of Justice. And I want to extend a warm word of welcome to the Minister and his support staff. And Minister, I immediately turn the floor over to you to respond to the questions that regard your ministry as you receive them from the members of Parliament. Minister Lewis, you have the floor.
Good evening, Honorable Chair. Good evening, Griffier. Good evening to the people of St. Maarten and the Honorable Members of Parliament. To go right into it, Chair Lady, I would like to go through you on the questions and answers for MP Duran. Can the ministry generate revenue by charging for tinted vehicles rather than banning them? This matter will need Parliament's input as it involves the latest verordening. Furthermore, we want to ensure that this does not make it more difficult for law enforcement officers to do their jobs, so their advice will also be required. Is the ministry open to allowing ex-uniformed officers to carry their firearms? What are the ministry's thoughts on creating a policy for ex-uniformed officers to carry firearms? Currently, an ex-police officer is classified as a civilian and must request a permit. For this to change, the weapons policy will have to be adopted. However, I agree with such a policy for ex-uniformed officers with an honorable end of service. Through you, Chair, the questions by MP Roseberg. Why is there no annual policy plan for the crime fund? And how has it been used in the past without one? The intention is to draft a policy plan on a yearly basis. A draft plan was completed for 2024. However, this is tentative, given that the legislation for the crime fund is still being finalized. Typically, we would have liked the policy to predate the completion of any projects or spending. However, due to the urgency of acquiring enough vehicles to address the increase in the crime and safety issues, the Minister has decided to prioritize this matter. How is it possible that BZ car funding, 3.6 million guilders, is in the crime fund? It was upon the Ministries of Justice request to expedite the processing of payments for the advice submitted by the border services. In the first ORVG project back in 2018, the ministry encountered some delays in processing of payments of the advice due to the funds being deposited into the government's general coffers. While this ensured careful oversight, it also led to some challenges in clarity regarding detailed expenditures. This time, by utilizing the crime fund, we aim to streamline the process, and enhance transparency. What specific projects have been funded by the Crime Fund and how much was spent on each? We will send this breakdown in writing. How much of the Crime Fund will be used for police vehicles and how many cars will be purchased? 9 vehicles will be purchased for an amount of 517,779 guilders. A total of 161,000 guilders is budgeted in the CapEx, which will be sufficient for 3 vehicles. How much money will remain in the Crime Fund after these purchases? A detailed breakdown will be provided in writing to illustrate the remaining balance after purchases. When will there be rehabilitation and resocialization projects using the Crime Fund start? Rehabilitation and resocialization are priorities of the Crime Fund, which align with the overall strategic plan for crime prevention. However, as mentioned, the legislation is still being finalized and the annual policy plan should be developed. Through you, Madam Chair, the questions posed by MP Brugge, along with the answers. Who was responsible for the budget cuts in the justice sector? And what was the reasoning behind them? Due to the necessity of reducing revenue, each ministry was required to implement necessary budget cuts to balance the country's finances. Consequently, we conducted an assessment to identify areas within the ministry where reductions could be made. These proposed cuts were determined internally. Is there any update on getting a container scanner for customs? And is it included in the budget? No, it is not included in the 2024 budget. We are interested in acquiring a container scanner for the harbor. However, we face 2 challenges: finding a suitable location to the port for a fixed base scanner and ensuring the long-term sustainability of a mobile container scanner. We are currently compiling a list of requirements for both options. Once completed, we will compare the investment and long-term return on investment while also considering maintenance and sustainability. Given our current staffing shortage, the fixed-based or mobile container scanner will significantly reduce the strain of our team. Due to recent budget cuts, we cannot make this investment. However, we are preparing a presentation for BZK, and once all the compiled data has been reviewed, we will request their support in financing this investment. Through you, Madam Chair, the questions posed by MP York: what are the plans for the forensic lab at the police station, including investments for new instruments? There is no concrete plan for establishing a forensic lab, as maintaining a facility of that magnitude would be unsustainable. The focus is instead of equipping personnel with sufficient and innovative resources to carry out their task efficiently. Through you, Madam Chair, the questions posed and the answers thereto by MP Otley. How will the cuts in the National Detective and Police budget affect the national security, and what is the plan to address these challenges? Given a strategy to look at unfilled vacancies or projects that have not started, we do not anticipate any detriment to the national security for the rest of 2024. However, we have noted the challenges of the budget cuts in general. What is the status of the critically ill prisoner, and what is the process for the release of terminally ill prisoners? who is responsible for deciding the release of such prisoners, and how is that handled within the justice system? I am aware of the critically ill prisoner in question, and his punishment was suspended to undergo treatment as per recommendation of the Public Prosecutor's Office. Please note that there is currently no formal policy for the release of terminally ill prisoners, so there are no specific guidelines regarding the timing before their expected passing. For release, in general, the process is as follows. A request is submitted to the governor, who then forwards it to the Minister of Justice for further handling. The minister seeks advice from the parole board, the prosecutor, and the judge who reviews the case. Based on these recommendations, a decision is made. The final decision is formalized through a ministerial decree prepared by Yezet of Yezet and signed by the minister. The ultimate decision lies with the Minister of Justice. Through you, Madam Chair, the questions posed by MP Westcott Williams. What is the status of the government property in Cold Bay on Orange Road? The property is government owned. VROMI has cleared the debris on the terrain. As it was bought upon the Ministries of Justice request, the ministry is responsible for deciding how the land will be used. Can you provide an overview of the fuel collection by customs and amount collected in 2022 and 2023? This will be sent in writing because of the list is extensive. Can you explain the various judicial agencies St. Maarten contributes to based on kingdom laws and how these contributions are managed? This also will be sent because the list is also extensive. Services of the VKS, from your perspective, can you give us the status of the VKS? They give several proposals to government. From your perspective, can that be highlighted? The VKS operates under the authority of the Prime Minister, making the outcomes of the proposal to government more appropriately addressed by his office. However, a service agreement exists between the Ministry of Justice, Harvey Bay, the Huis van Bewaring, and the VKS. As part of this agreement, the VKS supplies personnel to the prison daily. Has the interministerial group been created to address the issue of vaping among youth? And is the Ministry of Justice involved in this initiative? Yes, the interministerial group has been created. The Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Tourism, Economics Affairs, Telecommunication and Traffic, VSR, and the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport are included in this group. The objective is to adjust the relevant national ordinance regarding the sale of cigarettes and alcohol to incorporate the definition of vaping products and include them as restricted items for sale to minors under the age of 18. With that, I conclude the questions and the answers.
Thank you, Minister Lewis, for your answers regarding the Ministry of Justice, and those were the answers to members of Parliament. At this time, members of Parliament have the opportunity to react, and I see MP Irion requesting the floor. MP Irion, you have the floor.
Good evening.